Hear the uncomfortable truth. Most people fail in life not because they're not smart, talented, or hardworking, but because they never learn how to speak, listen, or connect in a way that truly matters. Communication, the very thing we all think we're naturally good at, is the silent force shaping your destiny, and yet almost everyone gets it wrong. Think about it: how many opportunities have slipped away not because you weren't qualified, but because you couldn't express your value clearly? How many relationships cracked, not because love was absent, but because understanding was? How many rooms have you walked into and left unseen, unheard, and underestimated, all because of how you communicated, not what you said? The world doesn't reward the loudest voice, it rewards the clearest message. And mastering that message, your message, is the difference between living unnoticed and becoming unstoppable. Communication isn't just a tool, it's the bridge between who you are and who you're trying to become. It builds empires, saves marriages, sparks revolutions, and opens doors you didn't even know existed. But here's the catch: it's not just about talking, it's not even just about listening, it's about connection, deep, human, unforgettable connection. It's about the words you choose, the silence you hold, the emotions you manage, and the presence you bring into every single interaction. That's why the most powerful communicators on earth don't speak the most, they influence the most. They don't just deliver messages, they move people. And that's exactly what this journey is about. We're not here to talk about grammar tips or public speaking tricks. We're here to explore the art and science of communication as the most powerful weapon you'll ever wield. We'll uncover why most people approach communication all wrong and how a simple mindset shift can transform every conversation into an opportunity. We'll reveal the hidden power of listening, not the passive kind you're used to, but the kind that makes people feel seen, valued, and understood. We'll dig into how to manage your emotions in the heat of a difficult discussion so you never again say words you'll regret. And we'll talk about something almost no one ever teaches you: the shocking strength of silence and how saying nothing at the right moment can speak louder than any argument ever could. By the end of this, you won't just talk differently, you'll think differently, connect differently, and live differently. Because communication isn't about what you know, it's about what you can make others feel. And when you master that, you don't just change conversations, you change outcomes, futures, and lives. But that's only the beginning. Let's flip the table. Everything you were taught about communication is backwards, because the goal isn't to talk so people hear you, it's to connect so people feel you, and that single shift detonates a chain reaction in your results, your relationships, and your reputation. When you walk into a room believing communication is a performance, you reach for perfect sentences and polished posture. When you walk in knowing it's a partnership, you reach for alignment, and alignment beats eloquence every day of the week. Here, the shocker: most people aren't ignored because their ideas are weak, they're ignored because their intent is unclear. They chase attention when they should create belonging. They speak to be noticed instead of speaking to be needed. The new rule is simple and ruthless: every conversation must answer three silent questions pulsing in the listener's mind. Do you see me? Do you get me? And do you value what I'm trying to do? Miss these and your best points die in the air. Hit them and even average words land like thunder. Start by redefining success mid-conversation. It's not did I say everything, but did we build anything? You're not delivering a monologue, you're co-creating meaning, and that demands intent, not improvisation. Before any important exchange, set a micro mission. At the end of this, I want us to agree on X, or I want them to feel safe telling me Y. The mind follows missions, the mouth follows nerves. Put another way, every conversation is an opportunity, not a calendar event. If you adopt this as a personal law, your tone softens, your questions sharpen, and your presence quiets the room because you're no longer wrestling for control. You're guiding toward clarity. Here's a tactic that feels almost unfair: speak last on topics you care about most. Let others empty their mental drawers first. When people feel heard, they stop guarding their positions and start exploring possibilities. Paradoxically, waiting gives your words more weight. Second, swap certainty for curiosity without surrendering conviction. You can hold a strong view while asking stronger questions. Try, what would make this idea dangerous? Or what am I not seeing that you are living? Questions like these don't stall progress, they surface constraints before the world does. Third, practice the two-page mindset. Page 1 is what you want to say, page 2 is how they will likely hear it. If you only write page 1, you broadcast. When you draft page 2, you translate, and translation is where influence lives. Fourth, master the triad of signals: words, tone, and silence. Words carry facts, tone carries feeling, silence carries meaning. The right pause tells the room, this matters. The wrong rush tells them, this is routine. Your competence is judged by content, your character by cadence. Here's the uncomfortable edge: you're always communicating, even when you say nothing. Crossed arms can shout louder than crossed sentences. A distracted glance can cancel an entire apology. Decide, therefore, what your body must say before your mouth opens. Next, install the three filters before you speak. Is it true? Is it kind? Is it useful? If it fails two, it's noise. If it passes all three, it's a gift. The fastest way to raise your communication ceiling is to lower your ego floor. Stop optimizing to be impressive and start optimizing to be invaluable. Practical drill. In your next meeting, give the room a name for the problem everyone feels but nobody has framed. Language leads. Once people can say it, they can solve it. Another drill: paraphrase before you propose. Here's what I'm hearing and here's what I'm holding. Did I get it right? You'll save hours of repair by spending seconds on verification. Remember the cardinal shift from the old script, listen to respond, to the winning doctrine, listen to understand. The former hunts for a gap to speak. The latter builds a bridge to stand on. As you adopt this mindset, you'll notice resistance melting where it used to harden. You'll see tense rooms unclench because your presence signals safety instead of competition. And when you do speak, you'll find your points landing cleaner because they're now the summary of shared reality, not a solo broadcast. If you want a brutal but liberating mantra, tattoo this on your calendar. Clarity over cleverness. Cleverness entertains, clarity changes behavior, and behavior change, not applause, is the true scoreboard of communication. Here's a final jolt for this section. Your greatest communication risk isn't saying the wrong thing, it's building the wrong dynamic. Once a dynamic sets in, defensive, dismissive, performative, it becomes the gravity of the room. Beat that gravity with intentional framing at the top. Name the purpose, name the win, name the guardrails. People rise to the clarity you provide. Do this consistently and you won't just be heard, you'll be trusted. And trusted voices don't chase influence, they attract it. But that wasn't the whole story. Here's the hard truth. Most people think they know how to listen, but what they're actually doing is waiting to talk, and that single mistake silently kills trust, weakens influence, and ruins opportunities before they even begin. Listening is not a passive act. It's an intentional strategy, a secret weapon that turns ordinary communicators into unforgettable ones. And if you've ever wondered why some people walk into a room and command loyalty without raising their voice, this is the reason. They make others feel profoundly heard. When someone feels truly understood, they lower their defenses, open their minds, and lean into connection, and that's where influence begins. Yet here's the paradox. We live in a world where attention is the new currency, and almost nobody is investing it wisely. We nod absent-mindedly while scrolling. We finish people's sentences because we're rushing to reply. We zone out because we assume we already know what they'll say. But in doing so, we send one damaging message: you're not that important. And once someone feels unimportant, you lose their trust, their openness, and eventually their respect. Real listening flips that script. It's about silencing your internal monologue long enough to step into their reality. It's about absorbing meaning, not just words. It's about paying attention to tone, emotion, and unspoken signals that reveal what they truly mean, because here's the secret: most people aren't saying what they're saying. They're hinting, implying, protecting, or testing. The best listeners don't just hear the sentence, they decode the message beneath it. And when you do that, people stop talking at you and start talking to you. There's a reason world-class negotiators, therapists, and leaders all share one common skill: they make people feel like the most important person in the room. And it's not magic, it's a method. Start by mastering presence. That means no half-listening, no rehearsing your reply, no multitasking. Lock in, eye contact, lean forward, nods that say "I'm with you." When they pause, don't rush to fill the silence, let it breathe. Most people reveal the most important thing after the pause. Next, learn to mirror, not mimic. Repeat key phrases back to them in your own words, not as a parrot, but as proof you're processing. For example, it sounds like you're frustrated because. This not only shows you're listening, it often helps them clarify their own thoughts. And never underestimate the power of asking deeper questions. Why is that important to you? What do you think should happen next? Questions like these don't just keep conversations alive, they turn them into breakthroughs. Because listening is not a courtesy, it's a strategy. It builds loyalty in leadership, deepens intimacy in relationships, and sharpens insight in business. And here's the wild part: the better you listen, the smarter people think you are. They'll walk away saying, "You always have the best advice," even if all you did was give them space to find their own answers. That's the beauty of it. The less you say, the more powerful your words become when you do speak. But let's go deeper, because listening is just one side of the coin. The real test comes when conversations don't go smoothly, when emotions boil and logic evaporates. And how you handle those moments will define whether your communication builds bridges or burns them. Here's the part nobody wants to talk about. It's not the words that destroy conversations, it's the emotions underneath them. You can prepare the perfect argument, rehearse the perfect response, and still watch everything fall apart if you lose control of how you feel. Emotions are the invisible current running beneath every interaction, and when they surge unchecked, even small disagreements turn into battles and meaningful dialogue dissolves into chaos. The truth is, most people don't manage their emotions manage them. They get defensive the moment they feel challenged. They get angry when they feel unheard. They shut down when they feel misunderstood. And before they realize it, the conversation isn't about solving the problem anymore, it's about winning the fight. But here's what the most effective communicators on the planet know. Emotions are not enemies to silence or suppress, they're signals to interpret and guide. Mastering them doesn't mean you stop feeling, it means you stop letting feelings make your decisions. And that begins with one powerful discipline: awareness. Before you can manage anything, you have to notice it. Most people react on autopilot. They feel anger and lash out. They feel fear and retreat. But if you pause for even 2 seconds and name the emotion: "I'm frustrated, I feel dismissed, I'm anxious about how this is going," you create a gap between feeling and reaction. And in that gap lies your power to choose a better response. Think of it like a thermostat. When you know the temperature, you can adjust it. Without awareness, you're just reacting to the weather. And awareness isn't just internal, it's external too. Emotional intelligence is reading the unspoken data in the room, the folded arms that scream defensiveness, the raised voice that signals fear, the silence that often means disappointment. When you recognize what's really happening, you stop fighting the wrong battles. You stop arguing about surface issues and start addressing the deeper needs beneath them. Once you've built awareness, the next skill is regulation, not suppression, but intelligent redirection. A heated conversation is not the time to unleash every emotion you feel. It's the time to choose the emotion that serves the outcome you want. Sometimes that means calming yourself with a deep breath before responding. Sometimes it means slowing your speech to bring the temperature down. Sometimes it means softening your tone even when you want to shout. And yes, sometimes it means stepping away entirely, because no one wins a conversation spoken in the language of rage. One of the most powerful tools here is what I call emotional framing. Instead of blaming or attacking, speak your feelings as information rather than accusation. Instead of "you never listen," try "I feel unheard when my ideas are dismissed quickly." That simple shift changes the energy. It moves the other person from defensiveness to curiosity. They stop preparing a counterattack and start processing your perspective. Another underrated tactic is empathy, not the soft, fluffy kind, but the strategic kind. The moment you step into someone else's shoes, your anger loses its grip. Maybe their sharp tone isn't disrespect, maybe it's insecurity. Maybe their resistance isn't stubbornness, maybe it's fear. When you see the human behind the behavior, you stop trying to win and start trying to understand. And understanding always moves conversations further than domination ever will. Yet, even with awareness, regulation, and empathy, there will be moments when the emotions are too intense, when logic has left the building. That's when the wisest move isn't another word, it's a pause. Taking a break isn't a sign of weakness, it's a sign of mastery. "I think we're both too heated to make progress right now. Let's revisit this in an hour." That single sentence can save relationships, deals, and reputations. And while you're at it, use that pause to check your internal dialogue. Negative self-talk is a fuel source for emotional fire. Thoughts like "they'll never understand" or "this is pointless" poison the process. Replace them with constructive ones: "we're trying to solve this together," or "calm communication will get us further." Finally, remember this: managing emotions doesn't mean ignoring them. It means channeling them into productive expression. Frustration can become passion, hurt can become vulnerability, even anger can become clarity if you frame it with intention. Because at the end of the day, the goal isn't to win arguments, it's to win understanding. And if you can master your emotions, you can guide even the most volatile conversations toward resolution instead of resentment. But here, where it gets even more surprising, sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. Silence, the very thing most people fear in a conversation, is actually one of the most explosive tools of influence you'll ever master. In a world addicted to noise, those who know when not to speak often wield the most power. But here's the twist: silence isn't the absence of communication, it's communication in its most potent, concentrated form. It's the pause that makes words matter. It's the stillness that makes people lean in. It's the unexpected gap that flips the dynamic of a conversation entirely. Think about it: when two people argue, the one who stops speaking first doesn't lose power, they gain control. Why? Because silence breaks the rhythm of escalation. It disarms the opponent who expects resistance. It forces the other side to fill the space, often revealing more than they intended. In high-stakes negotiations, elite negotiators deploy silence like a scalpel. They make their point, then stop talking. And 9 times out of 10, the other side starts justifying, explaining, or conceding. That's not luck, that's psychological gravity. The same is true in personal relationships. When emotions flare, the instinct is to keep talking, to over-explain, over-defend, overreact. But silence disrupts that pattern. It gives both sides space to cool off, reflect, and return with clearer minds. It prevents you from saying words you can't unsay and protects the relationship from wounds that apologies can't fully heal. And beyond conflict, silence carries another, deeper power: it signals presence. It tells the other person, "I'm here, I'm listening, you matter enough for me not to rush." This is why some of the most comforting moments between people happen not in conversation but in shared quiet. No performance, no pressure, just presence. But silence is more than emotional intelligence, it's strategic intelligence. It's how you take control of timing, tension, and tone. Well-placed silence before a key statement builds anticipation. A pause after a bold question forces reflection. Even deliberate silence during someone else's rant can make them realize they're overreacting without you ever needing to say a word. And here's a fascinating paradox: silence often amplifies your message. Imagine saying something powerful and then stopping. The human brain hates unresolved space. That pause compels people to replay your words in their heads, to analyze, to internalize. Your point doesn't fade, it echoes. But perhaps the most overlooked power of silence is that it shifts control. People expect arguments, they prepare for debates, they're ready to counter words, but they can't argue with silence. It changes the pace of the interaction and subtly forces them onto your rhythm. In moments of hostility, it's a shield. In moments of negotiation, it's leverage. And in moments of vulnerability, it's compassion. Silence used with intent is never emptiness, it's space. And space is where trust, clarity, and solutions grow. So the next time you feel the urge to rush an explanation, defend a point, or fill the air just to avoid discomfort, don't. Choose silence. Watch what happens. You'll notice the tension soften, the other person speak more honestly, the conversation take a deeper turn. And in that space, you'll realize something profound. Communication isn't about the volume of your words but the weight of your presence. That's the art of effective communication, not just speaking with power but knowing when to speak, when to listen, when to feel, and when to say absolutely nothing. And if you master these four: intention, listening, emotional control, and silence, you won't just communicate better. You'll influence faster, connect deeper, lead stronger, and live wiser. Because the truth is this: words will get you heard, but communication, real, intentional, deeply human communication, will make you unforgettable. And here, where everything comes together, because once you truly understand that effective communication is not just a skill but a superpower, you begin to see its fingerprints on every area of your life. The quality of your communication directly shapes the quality of your opportunities, your influence, your leadership, your love life, and even your legacy. It's the invisible thread weaving through every promotion you'll ever earn, every deal you'll ever close, every relationship you'll ever build. People don't follow titles, they follow voices. They don't trust resumes, they trust presence. And they don't remember what you said, they remember how you made them feel. That's why the most successful people in the world aren't always the smartest in the room. They're the ones who can take what's in their mind and deliver it in a way that transforms what's in someone else's heart. They speak not to impress, but to ignite. They listen not to reply, but to understand. They manage their emotions not to suppress them, but to channel them into clarity and compassion. And when necessary, they wield silence not as absence, but as influence. These are not soft skills, they are power skills. They're the difference between having talent and having traction, between being noticed and being remembered, between existing and truly leading. And here's a truth that should shake you to your core. Every conversation you have, from the boardroom to the dinner table, is an audition for trust. You're either building credibility or burning it. You're either deepening a bond or distancing one. You're either opening doors or quietly closing them. There's no neutral ground. Every word you choose, every question you ask, every moment you hold silence is communicating something about who you are and what you stand for. So ask yourself, what are you communicating when you walk into a room? Do people lean in when you speak, or do they check out? Do they feel understood when they talk to you, or do they feel unheard? Do your words spark action, or do they fall flat? Because the answer to those questions will predict the trajectory of your relationships, your influence, and your impact more accurately than any degree, strategy, or resume ever will. The good news: communication is not a gift, it's a skill. And like any skill, it can be learned, sharpened, and mastered. But mastery doesn't happen in the big speeches, it happens in the micro moments, in the way you greet someone, in the patience you show when listening, in the courage you summon to pause when anger wants to speak for you, in the intention you bring to a difficult conversation. These moments are your practice ground, and over time they transform you from someone who simply talks into someone whose voice moves mountains. So here's the challenge I leave you with: never again treat communication as something ordinary. It's the currency of leadership, the heartbeat of influence, the bridge to opportunity, and the foundation of legacy. Master it, and you'll never have to chase success. Success will follow the sound of your voice. Speak with purpose, listen with patience, feel with wisdom, and wield silence with power. Do that consistently, and you won't just change the way people respond to you, you'll change the way the world remembers you. Because in the end, life isn't shaped by the noise we make. It's shaped by the conversations we master. And if you can master the art of effective communication, there's no room, no relationship, no opportunity on earth that will ever be closed to you again. And if all of this sounds powerful, it's because it is. But here's the truth that separates the ordinary communicator from the extraordinary one: communication isn't a one-time performance, it's a lifelong discipline. It's not something you switch on when the stakes are high and then forget about. It's something you cultivate in every interaction, every message, every conversation, until it becomes a natural extension of who you are. Think about the leaders who have changed history, the entrepreneurs who have built empires, the mentors who have shaped generations. None of them got there by accident. They became unforgettable not because they shouted the loudest, but because they connected the deepest. They mastered the ability to read a room, to sense unspoken fears, to plant ideas so clearly in someone's mind that it felt like those ideas were their own. They knew that communication isn't about pushing information, it's about pulling people toward a vision. And once you grasp that, everything changes. You stop arguing and start aligning. You stop persuading and start inspiring. You stop talking at people and start talking with them. And the most beautiful part: the ripple effect is exponential. A single conversation handled with intention can change a relationship. A single word delivered with conviction can change a career. A single moment of silence held with courage can change a life. This is why effective communication is not just a skill, it's a responsibility. Because the words you choose today can heal or hurt, build or break, unite or divide. They can become the reason someone believes in themselves again, or the reason they never try. And when you truly understand that weight, you begin to approach every interaction with a new level of care, power, and purpose. You start asking yourself bigger questions before you speak. Am I building trust or tearing it down? Am I speaking from ego or from empathy? Am I reacting to emotions or responding with intention? These questions force you to rise above impulse and step into influence. And once that becomes your default, you'll notice something extraordinary. People will seek your presence not because you talk the most, but because they feel the most seen and safe around you. They'll share ideas they wouldn't share with anyone else. They'll open doors that were previously locked. They'll invite you into conversations that shape futures because your voice will no longer be noise in the room, it will be signal. That is the legacy of a master communicator. And make no mistake, this isn't about manipulation or performance. It's about stewardship, using your words, your listening, your silence, and your emotional intelligence to leave people, places, and possibilities better than you found them. It's about building bridges where others build walls. It's about leading conversations that create solutions instead of amplifying problems. And ultimately, it's about transforming communication from a tool you use into a power you embody. So from this moment on, stop thinking of communication as something that just happens. Start seeing it as the art and architecture of your influence. Because in the end, every great destiny, every breakthrough, every revolution, every movement began not with an action but with a conversation. And if you can master the conversations that shape your world, there will be no limit to the impact you can have on it. Remember this final truth: the words you speak become the reality you live. So speak with purpose, connect with intention, and lead with empathy, because the future belongs to those who know not just how to be heard, but how to make every word count. And here's the ultimate revelation, the secret most people never realize until it's too late. Communication isn't just about the words you say to others, it's about the story you teach them to tell about you. Every conversation you engage in is building a narrative about your character, your credibility, your leadership, your value, and over time that narrative becomes the currency of your influence. People won't remember every sentence you speak, but they'll remember how consistent, how intentional, how trustworthy your voice was. And that perception, that story, will open doors your resume never could. But here's the catch: if you're careless with your communication, that story can work against you. If you interrupt more than you inquire, people will remember you as impatient. If you dominate instead of dialogue, they'll label you controlling. If you react emotionally instead of responding intelligently, they'll assume you're unpredictable. But if you're deliberate, if you listen deeply, speak clearly, pause wisely, and respond with emotional intelligence, they'll see you as a leader long before you ever hold the title. And once that happens, influence stops being something you chase and becomes something you carry. That's why the stakes are so high. Communication is not about winning arguments, proving points, or sounding smart, it's about building trust at scale. It's the glue of great teams, the heartbeat of strong families, the backbone of every enduring movement. Empires rise and fall on the strength of communication. Businesses thrive or die based on how well they listen to their customers. Relationships grow or wither based on the quality of conversations. And every single time, the difference isn't talent, money, or luck, it's how effectively people connect. The question is, will you treat communication as something to get through, or will you approach it as something to master? Will you settle for being heard, or will you become someone who transforms hearts and shifts minds? Because here's the raw truth: the future doesn't belong to the loudest voice in the room, it belongs to the clearest one. It belongs to the person who can bridge differences, who can translate complexity into clarity, who can turn strangers into allies and skeptics into believers. That's the power you're holding every time you open your mouth. And if you ever doubt just how much impact you can make, remember this: a single conversation can heal a fractured relationship. A single speech can ignite a revolution. A single idea spoken with clarity and conviction can rewrite the future. That power isn't reserved for the gifted few, it's available to anyone willing to learn, practice, and master the art. And that means it's available to you. So here's the final call to action. From this day forward, speak with intention, not impulse. Listen with curiosity, not convenience. Respond with wisdom, not ego. And choose silence not out of fear but out of strategy. Because the person who masters communication doesn't just influence the room, they shape the direction the room will go. They don't just get invited to the table, they're the ones deciding what's served. And in a noisy world desperate for voices of clarity, courage, and compassion, be that voice. Because when you do, you won't just change how people listen. You'll change how they live, and that, more than any title, any award, or any paycheck, is the true measure of success. Here's another layer of truth most people never grasp. Communication is not just about connection, it is about creation. Every sentence you speak builds the world you walk in. Each word you choose becomes the seed of a perception, a decision, a memory. People shape their view of you not based on your intentions but on the clarity and consistency of your message. This means communication is not a skill to be used occasionally. It is a discipline that defines every outcome you experience. The deals you close, the trust you build, the influence you earn, all of it flows from how you speak, how you listen, how you pause. When you treat every interaction as a strategic opportunity rather than a routine exchange, conversations become vehicles for transformation instead of transactions. Leaders who master this don't wait for opportunities, they create them with their words. They move people not through manipulation but through meaning. They dissolve conflict without raising their voice because their silence speaks louder than anger. They inspire action without forcing it because their clarity makes action feel inevitable. True communicators know that power lies not in talking more but in talking better. They strip away the unnecessary to let truth hit harder. They stop trying to be impressive and focus on being impactful. They build trust by being consistent, precise, intentional. They focus less on sounding right and more on creating understanding. The result is undeniable. People lean in, follow their lead, remember their words long after they're spoken. Communication is the invisible thread connecting every result in life. It is the reason some people thrive in relationships while others struggle. It is the reason some teams unite under a single vision while others collapse under misalignment. It is the reason some ideas change the world while others vanish without a trace. Mastering this art means mastering outcomes. It means no conversation is wasted. It means no opportunity is missed. It means no relationship is left undernourished. Once you grasp this, your conversations stop being ordinary moments and start becoming turning points. They shift perspectives, open doors, change destinies. They make you unforgettable. Every word becomes a tool, every pause becomes a strategy, every interaction becomes a chance to shape the story of your life. This is the essence of influence. Speak with purpose. Listen with presence, respond with wisdom, hold silence with power. Treat communication as the most valuable asset you possess because it is. Those who master it do not wait for the future to happen, they speak it into existence. Here's the part that should electrify you. Communication is not just a tool for surviving, it is the weapon for dominating. Every conversation is a battlefield where clarity defeats confusion, confidence overpowers doubt, intention dismantles resistance. The people who rise to the top are not always the most qualified or even the most experienced. They are the ones who can make others believe, feel, commit, move. They don't speak to fill silence, they speak to shift reality. They understand that words are not sounds, they are strategies. A simple sentence can open doors that talent alone never could. A single question can dismantle decades of misunderstanding. A well-timed pause can reverse the course of an argument without a single extra word. Communication is influence in its purest form, the difference between leaders who inspire nations and those who are forgotten. It is the reason some ideas spark movements while others fade into obscurity. It is the force that transforms ambition into action, vision into victory. Most people speak to be heard, powerful communicators speak to be felt. They inject energy into their message, turning language into momentum. They don't throw words at people, they pull people into their vision. They speak not from a script but from a place of conviction so strong it's contagious. Their tone carries authority, their silence carries weight, their presence demands attention when they enter a room. The atmosphere changes not because they talk the most but because they talk with purpose. They build bridges where others build barriers. They create allies where others create opponents. They make people believe that impossibility is negotiable. This is why mastering communication is the closest thing to superpower you will ever develop. It gives you the ability to walk into chaos and create clarity. It gives you the strength to stand in conflict and create consensus. It gives you the presence to walk into opportunities that others never even see. Once you own this power, conversations stop being chances, they become chess moves. Every word becomes a deliberate strike. Every question becomes a key. Every pause becomes a door left open for someone to step through. Imagine a life where you no longer fear difficult conversations because you know how to guide them. Imagine relationships where misunderstanding dissolves before it begins because your presence signals safety. Imagine a career where your ideas are not just heard but championed because people trust your voice. That is the life communication mastery builds. It is not reserved for the charismatic few. It is available to anyone willing to learn, refine, repeat. Every conversation you have is a chance to practice this art. Every interaction is an opportunity to sharpen your influence. Every silence is a moment to shape perception. Do it with courage, do it with precision, do it with purpose. Speak not just to communicate but to elevate. Listen not just to hear but to heal. Respond not just to reply but to redefine. Because the ones who control conversations ultimately control outcomes. They write the narrative, they guide the future, they don't wait for life to happen, they speak it into being. The reality most people overlook: communication is not just the foundation of individual success. It is the bloodstream of society itself. Entire civilizations rise or crumble based on how well people speak, listen, and understand one another. Laws, revolutions, innovations, peace treaties, cultural shifts, none of them exist without words exchanged, ideas shared, visions explained. Society is nothing more than an ongoing conversation, and the quality of that conversation determines the quality of the world we live in. When communication is lazy, society fractures, misunderstandings multiply, trust evaporates, communities polarize, progress stalls. But when communication is intentional, bridges form where walls once stood. Prejudices dissolve under the weight of empathy. Divisions shrink when people finally feel heard. Collective action becomes possible because people no longer talk past each other, they talk with each other. Every movement that changed the world started with a conversation that challenged the status quo. The civil rights movement began with a voice refusing to be silenced. Nations united when leaders chose dialogue over destruction. Ideas that seemed impossible became inevitable once someone communicated them clearly enough for others to believe. The ripple effect is endless. A single conversation between two people can heal a broken relationship. A single conversation within a community can spark unity. A single speech delivered with conviction can alter the course of history. Communication is the invisible infrastructure that holds society together, yet it's treated like a throwaway skill. Schools teach equations but rarely teach empathy. Workplaces train for productivity but ignore how communication builds trust. Governments write policies but fail to communicate their purpose, leaving citizens disconnected and disillusioned. If society wants progress, it must start with better conversations, conversations grounded in respect, built on curiosity, driven by truth. This means speaking not to attack but to understand. It means listening not for rebuttals but for solutions. It means choosing silence not to retreat but to create space for reflection. Imagine a society where debates are driven by logic instead of ego. Imagine cities where communities solve problems through dialogue instead of division. Imagine nations that negotiate differences with words instead of weapons. All of it is possible when communication becomes a collective priority rather than an afterthought. True progress is not built in parliaments or boardrooms alone. It is built in classrooms, living rooms, coffee shops, in the everyday conversations that shape how people see one another. Every message shared online, every speech delivered, every discussion at a dinner table contributes to the cultural fabric that holds us together or tears us apart. This is why communication is not just a personal skill, it is a societal duty. It is how we confront injustice. It is how we inspire collaboration. It is how we build futures where humanity thrives instead of merely survives. So the next time you speak, remember that your words don't exist in isolation. They ripple outward, influencing minds, shaping narratives, guiding decisions. The way you listen can restore someone's faith in humanity. The way you pause before responding can prevent a conflict. The way you choose clarity over chaos can change the tone of an entire community. Communication is how we write the next chapter of our shared story. If we master it, individually and collectively, we create a society defined by understanding instead of ignorance, unity instead of division, growth instead of stagnation. If we neglect it, we surrender that future to noise, confusion, and decay. So speak with courage because the world is listening. Listen with humility because the world is speaking. Shape conversations that uplift, educate, challenge, and connect because every word you share isn't just yours, it becomes part of the world we all live in. The essence of effective communication goes far deeper than exchanging information. It is the very mechanism through which ideas gain power, relationships gain depth, societies gain stability, and human potential gains momentum. It is the bridge that transforms thoughts into action, intentions into outcomes, and visions into realities. Without it, even the greatest ideas remain trapped in the mind. Leadership loses its influence, love loses its expression, and communities lose their cohesion. Communication is the medium through which trust is built, conflict is resolved, collaboration is sparked, and change is driven. It is not a luxury reserved for leaders or intellectuals. It is the lifeblood of human connection itself. When done right, it does more than transmit words. It transfers energy, emotion, and understanding. It creates alignment where there was confusion, unity where there was division, and momentum where there was stagnation. The essence lies in clarity, the ability to deliver a message so precisely that it cuts through noise and resonates deeply. Clarity ensures that intentions are not lost in translation, that messages are not distorted by assumptions, that meaning is not buried beneath jargon. A clear communicator doesn't just speak, they illuminate. They remove ambiguity so that decisions can be made with confidence and actions can follow with purpose. Yet clarity alone is not enough. Communication must also carry connection. People don't remember the facts you share as much as they remember how you made them feel while sharing them. Connection humanizes your message. It allows you to speak to people's hearts as well as their minds. It turns cold information into a warm invitation to engage, collaborate, believe, and act. Equally vital is the element of credibility. Effective communication earns trust, and trust is the foundation of influence. The words of someone who is inconsistent, dismissive, or self-serving lose their power no matter how eloquent they sound. On the other hand, messages spoken with honesty, backed by integrity, and delivered with authenticity carry undeniable weight. Credibility transforms speech into conviction and listeners into followers. It makes people believe not just what you say but in you as the one saying it. Another layer of its essence is adaptability. Communication is not one size fits all. The best communicators adjust their message to the context, the audience, and the moment. They know when to speak boldly and when to speak gently, when to educate and when to empathize, when to lead with data and when to lead with stories. This ability to meet people where they are makes the message accessible and impactful. Without adaptability, even the most brilliant message risks falling on deaf ears. At its core, effective communication is a catalyst for change. It turns resistance into openness, apathy into action, ignorance into understanding. It empowers leaders to inspire movements, educators to spark curiosity, visionaries to rally support, and communities to solve complex problems. History proves this truth over and over. Revolutions are not born from weapons but from words. Social progress doesn't happen in silence. It happens when courageous voices speak with clarity, compassion, and conviction. Its essence also resides in responsibility. Every word carries weight. Words can heal or harm, uplift or oppress, build or destroy. Recognizing this power creates a moral obligation to communicate with intention. The truly effective communicator doesn't speak to manipulate or dominate, but to enlighten, unite, and elevate. They understand that their words shape perceptions, influence decisions, and leave lasting impressions long after the conversation ends. Finally, the deepest essence of effective communication is its ability to transcend differences. It is the tool that allows people from different backgrounds, beliefs, and experiences to find common ground. It turns strangers into allies, competitors into collaborators, adversaries into partners. It dissolves walls of misunderstanding and builds bridges of mutual respect. In a world that often fractures under the weight of division, communication remains the most powerful instrument for healing and rebuilding. To master it is to master influence. To neglect it is to limit potential. It is the foundation upon which leadership, innovation, relationships, and society itself stand. Effective communication is not just about speaking, it is about shaping reality with intention. It is not just about being understood, it is about creating understanding. It is not just about delivering a message, it is about delivering meaning. When communication reaches this level of depth and purpose, it ceases to be a skill and becomes a force that changes minds, transforms lives, and moves the world forward. Effective communication is also the engine of progress, both personal and collective. It is the spark that turns isolated thoughts into shared visions and individual efforts into collective movements. Without it, innovation stalls, collaboration crumbles, and even the most promising ideas die in silence. Think of every major breakthrough in history, from scientific revolutions to social transformations, and you'll find that communication was the invisible force propelling them forward. It was how minds connected, how visions spread, how people rallied around causes larger than themselves. Words have always been the blueprint for change because they carry the power to unite people under a shared purpose. At a personal level, communication is the tool that shapes destiny. The way you speak determines how the world sees you, how much trust people place in you, and how much influence you wield. Opportunities often don't go to the most talented or the most deserving, they go to those who communicate their value with confidence and clarity. Doors open not just because of skill, but because of the ability to articulate that skill in a way that resonates with others. Every negotiation you win, every connection you build, every leader who listens to your idea, all of it is rooted in how effectively you express yourself. Master this and you stop waiting for chances, you start creating them. In relationships, communication is the glue that holds everything together. It deepens intimacy, resolves conflicts, nurtures trust, and builds understanding. Miscommunication, on the other hand, is often the root of resentment, disconnection, and broken bonds. A relationship without communication is like a ship without a compass. It drifts aimlessly and eventually sinks. Effective communication gives relationships direction. It turns assumptions into clarity, silence into empathy, and differences into dialogue. It allows people to feel seen, heard, and valued, the three fundamental needs of any human connection. Within organizations, communication shapes culture and drives results. A leader who communicates vision with passion and precision can mobilize teams to achieve extraordinary outcomes. A company that communicates its values clearly attracts loyalty from both employees and customers. Even conflict in the workplace, which is inevitable, becomes a catalyst for growth when communication is used to navigate it instead of avoid it. Misunderstandings that once caused friction become opportunities for collaboration when addressed with openness and respect. Effective communication is the heartbeat of organizational success. Without it, strategies fail, teams fragment, and morale collapses. In society, its importance multiplies. It's the tool that bridges ideological divides, fosters tolerance, and builds civic cooperation. In an era dominated by misinformation, the ability to communicate truth clearly and persuasively has never been more essential. It equips people to challenge falsehoods, engage in meaningful debate, and participate in shaping a more informed, empathetic society. Without effective communication, misinformation festers, polarization deepens, and progress halts. But with it, societies evolve, learning to navigate complexity, embrace diversity, and solve shared challenges together. The beauty of effective communication is that it is a skill anyone can develop, yet its impact is limitless. It doesn't require wealth, status, or privilege, only intention, awareness, and practice. It starts with small habits, choosing clarity over complexity, listening with curiosity instead of judgment, pausing before reacting, speaking with purpose instead of noise. Over time, these habits compound into mastery, and mastery transforms everything. Your relationships strengthen. Your influence expands, your ideas travel further, your presence commands respect. At its highest level, effective communication is not about talking more, it's about impacting more. It's about creating moments that linger in the mind long after the words are spoken. It's about building trust so deeply that people follow not because they have to, but because they want to. It's about turning conversations into catalysts that change behavior, shift beliefs, and shape futures. This is the true power of communication. It doesn't just share messages, it builds movements. It doesn't just transfer knowledge, it transforms lives. It doesn't just connect people, it compels them to build something greater together. So when you think about effective communication, don't reduce it to a soft skill or a social advantage. See it for what it truly is: the cornerstone of leadership, the engine of progress, the foundation of trust, and the blueprint for lasting impact. Mastering it isn't just about speaking well, it's about living well. It's about creating a life, a career, a society that reflects the power of what's possible when words are used not as noise but as tools of purpose. When communication reaches this level, it stops being an art, it becomes a force that shapes everything it touches. At the deepest level, the essence of effective communication is that it is the architecture of influence, the way ideas are built, transferred, and transformed into action. It is the silent engine behind leadership, innovation, education, justice, and social progress. Without it, every plan remains a dream, every vision remains invisible, and every intention remains misunderstood. With it, the impossible becomes inevitable. It is the reason why some people can walk into a room and shift its energy without shouting, why certain leaders rally millions with a few sentences, why some movements last generations while others fade overnight. It is because their communication transcends words, it connects at a level that speaks to values, emotions, purpose, and belief. Effective communication is also the foundation of credibility. People don't follow information, they follow trust. They don't buy products, they buy confidence in the person presenting them. They don't vote for policies, they vote for the clarity of the vision behind them. Trust is the currency of every human interaction, and communication is how that currency is earned, spent, and multiplied. Every message you deliver is either building your credibility or eroding it. The tone you use, the consistency of your words, the authenticity behind your message, these are the things that determine whether people see you as someone worth listening to. Once trust is established, communication becomes unstoppable. It bypasses skepticism and speaks directly to conviction. What makes effective communication so powerful is its ability to transcend barriers. Language, culture, class, age, ideology, these differences can divide, but communication bridges them. It is the universal connector that allows a scientist to explain complex discoveries to the public, a teacher to ignite curiosity in a child, a diplomat to prevent war, a leader to unite diverse groups under a single mission. Even silence, often seen as absence, becomes a language of empathy, respect, or power when used with purpose. Communication in its purest form is not just about what is said but what is understood, and that understanding is what makes collaboration, innovation, and peace possible. Another vital aspect of its essence is its role in shaping identity. The words you speak repeatedly, to others and to yourself, create the narrative of who you are. They shape how people perceive you and how you perceive yourself. Speak with confidence and purpose, and people begin to associate you with authority and leadership. Speak with doubt and hesitation, and they question your credibility even before you finish. The stories you tell, the language you use, the tone you adopt, all of it writes the script of your influence. That script becomes the foundation of your reputation, and reputation is often the gateway to opportunity. Communication is also the oxygen of collaboration. No team, no movement, no organization can function without it. It is how visions are aligned, strategies are coordinated, and efforts are unified. Poor communication leads to confusion, duplication, wasted energy, and failed execution. Clear communication aligns every part of a system toward a common objective, making the collective far more powerful than the sum of its parts. In this way, communication doesn't just connect, it amplifies. It multiplies potential by synchronizing purpose. On a societal scale, communication shapes culture itself. It determines the stories a people tell about themselves, the values they celebrate, the priorities they pursue. It is the foundation of democracy, the heart of justice, the soul of education. Laws may govern behavior, but communication governs belief, and belief is what truly changes the world. A society that communicates openly, empathetically, and intelligently thrives. One that communicates poorly fractures, mistrusts, and regresses. Every era of human advancement, from the Renaissance to the digital age, was built on an evolution in how people communicated ideas. The true beauty of communication lies in its dual power. It shapes both the world around you and the world within you. Externally, it builds bridges, solves problems, drives innovation, and transforms societies. Internally, it builds confidence, clarifies thinking, strengthens self-belief, and unlocks purpose. Every time you learn to express an idea more clearly, you sharpen your thinking. Every time you articulate your values, you deepen your identity. Every time you speak with intention, you strengthen your influence. In the end, the essence of effective communication is this: it is the greatest force humans possess for shaping reality. It turns chaos into order, strangers into allies, dreams into results. It gives weight to ideas, breathes life into relationships, and builds futures worth striving for. It is the tool that empowers the powerless, the bridge that connects the divided, the voice that gives life to vision. Master it, and there is no door you cannot open, no challenge you cannot navigate, no legacy you cannot build. It is not merely about words, it is about impact. It is not about being heard, it is about being remembered. It is not about talking, it is about transforming. That is the real power, the timeless essence, and the undeniable necessity of effective communication. Even in relationships, effective communication is not just important, it is everything. It is the heartbeat of connection, the oxygen that keeps love alive, the glue that binds trust, intimacy, and understanding together. Without it, even the deepest affection begins to crumble under the weight of assumptions, silence, and misinterpretation. With it, even the most fragile bond can grow into something unbreakable. Relationships don't fail because people stop loving each other, they fail because people stop understanding each other. They stop expressing how they feel, they stop listening with intention, they stop translating their thoughts into words the other person can truly grasp. When communication breaks down, walls go up, misunderstandings multiply, resentment festers, distance grows. But when communication flows openly, honestly, intentionally, relationships transform into sanctuaries of safety, strength, and growth. At its core, communication in relationships is not about talking more, it's about talking meaningfully. It's about creating a space where both people feel heard, valued, and respected. It's the willingness to say, "This is how I feel," without fear of judgment, and the discipline to listen when the other person says, "This is what I need." It's not about winning arguments or proving points, it's about building bridges between two different perspectives and meeting somewhere in the middle. It's about asking questions not to respond but to understand: what's really bothering you? What can I do to make this better? What does love look like to you? These questions invite vulnerability and deepen connection far more than any grand gesture ever could. Effective communication also nurtures trust, the foundation upon which every strong relationship is built. Trust doesn't just appear, it's earned through consistent words and actions that align. It's reinforced when people express themselves with honesty instead of hiding behind silence. It's strengthened when difficult conversations are faced with maturity instead of avoided out of fear. Without communication, trust erodes because uncertainty fills the gaps. But when partners communicate openly, even about uncomfortable topics, trust grows because transparency removes doubt. Another essential dimension is emotional safety. People thrive in relationships where they feel safe to share their deepest fears, dreams, and insecurities without fear of ridicule or rejection. Communication is what builds that safety. It's the gentle "I'm here for you" during moments of struggle. It's the patient "I want to understand" when conflicts arise. It's the consistent "I love you" expressed not just through words but through tone, timing, and attention. Emotional safety allows people to be their truest selves, and that authenticity is what sustains relationships over time. Conflict, too, is inevitable in any relationship, but the outcome of that conflict is determined not by its presence but by how it's communicated. Poor communication turns disagreements into battles, with each person trying to win instead of resolve. Effective communication, however, transforms conflict into an opportunity for deeper understanding. It shifts the focus from blame to solution, from "you always" and "you never" to "I feel" and "I need." It's the difference between tearing each other down and growing stronger together. Even silence plays a crucial role. Healthy communication is not just about the words spoken but also about knowing when to pause, when to listen, when to offer quiet presence instead of advice. Silence, when used intentionally, becomes a language of love. It says, "I'm here, I'm listening, I don't need to fix this, I just need to hold space for you." It gives both people room to process, reflect, and respond thoughtfully instead of reacting impulsively. Moreover, effective communication ensures that love languages are not just spoken but understood. Everyone expresses and receives love differently, through words, actions, time, gifts, or touch. Without communication, these signals can be misread or missed entirely. With communication, partners learn not only how to love, but how the other person feels loved. They stop assuming and start aligning. They stop projecting their own preferences and start speaking directly to the heart of the other person. Relationships also require continuous communication because people evolve. Dreams change, priorities shift, perspectives grow. What worked 2 years ago might not work today. Consistent, intentional conversations allow relationships to grow alongside these changes instead of being left behind by them. They keep couples aligned, adaptable, and deeply connected no matter how life transforms around them. Ultimately, communication is not just a component of a healthy relationship, it is the relationship. It's the daily dialogue that builds trust, the quiet moments that deepen intimacy, the honest conversations that solve problems, and the shared words that remind two people why they chose each other in the first place. It's the difference between surviving together and thriving together. When communication is mastered, love stops being a feeling that fades and becomes a choice that strengthens. It transforms relationships from transactional arrangements into transformational partnerships. It creates a bond where both people feel seen, valued, and cherished for who they are and who they are becoming. It turns relationships into sources of healing instead of hurt, growth instead of stagnation, power instead of pain. That is the true essence of communication in relationships, not just the sharing of words but the building of a shared world, one conversation at a time. Communication in relationships is also the foundation of emotional intimacy, that rare sacred closeness that goes beyond physical attraction or shared experiences. It's the invisible thread that connects hearts on a deeper level, allowing two people to not just coexist but truly know and understand each other. Emotional intimacy is not built overnight. It's constructed conversation by conversation, word by word, moment by moment. It grows when people are willing to be vulnerable, to share their fears, their insecurities, their hopes, and their failures without fear of being judged or dismissed. None of that is possible without honest, open communication. It is through communication that partners learn to read between the lines of each other's hearts. It's how they uncover what the other person isn't saying, how they recognize needs that haven't been voiced, how they provide support before it's even requested. This depth of connection doesn't come from guessing or assuming, it comes from talking, asking, listening, and understanding. The strongest relationships are those where both people can say, "I feel safe telling you anything," because that safety is a product of intentional communication over time. Communication is also how couples create shared meaning, the sense of us that transforms two individuals into a unified team. Through conversations, they build shared values, align goals, and define what their future looks like together. They craft rituals, set boundaries, and nurture traditions that make their relationship unique. Every plan discussed, every dream shared, every memory revisited is a building block in the foundation of that shared identity. Without communication, couples drift into parallel lives, existing together but growing apart. With communication, they evolve together, stronger, more aligned, more united. Even in moments of silence, communication remains present. The way someone looks at you, the tone they use, the space they give, all of it communicates something. Being aware of these nonverbal signals and learning how to interpret and respond to them is just as important as the words spoken aloud. A comforting touch can say, "I'm here." A gentle pause before responding can say, "I'm thinking about how to support you." A shared smile across the room can say, "We're in this together." Effective communication turns even silence into a language of love. Another dimension that highlights its power in relationships is healing. Every relationship will face hurt, misunderstandings, disappointments, betrayals, or simply the friction of two imperfect people trying to love each other. Healing doesn't happen automatically with time, it happens with communication. It's the sincere apology that acknowledges pain, the honest conversation that rebuilds trust, the patient dialogue that helps two people understand how they got lost and how they can find their way back. Silence cannot heal what words have broken. Only intentional communication, humble, vulnerable, and persistent, can do that. Effective communication also future-proofs relationships. Life is unpredictable, careers change, priorities shift, family dynamics evolve, health challenges arise. Couples who communicate well navigate these transitions more successfully because they don't leave each other in the dark. They talk about expectations before they become resentments. They discuss changes before they turn into conflicts. They address small frustrations before they become irreparable wounds. Communication acts as an early warning system, catching issues before they spiral out of control. It also sustains passion. Many believe passion fades with time, but in truth, passion fades when communication does. Talking, truly talking, keeps curiosity alive. It keeps partners learning new things about each other even decades into a relationship. It keeps them emotionally engaged, mentally connected, and romantically invested. Conversations about desires, dreams, fantasies, and fears keep the relationship dynamic and alive. They prevent comfort from turning into complacency. Ultimately, communication is the heartbeat of love because love itself is a language, and languages must be spoken, heard, and understood to thrive. Love that isn't expressed loses its warmth. Feelings that aren't communicated lose their meaning. Without words, even the strongest feelings can wither in silence. But with communication, honest, empathetic, courageous communication, love deepens, evolves, and becomes unbreakable. In the end, every relationship is a living conversation. The words you choose become the trust you build. The questions you ask become the closeness you share. The silence you hold becomes the comfort you offer. The stories you tell together become the legacy of your love. Master communication and you master the art of building relationships that don't just last, they grow, heal, inspire, and transform both people involved. Because communication isn't just how love is expressed, it's how love is sustained. It's how two hearts learn to beat in rhythm. It's how two lives become one story. and it's how ordinary connections become extraordinary bonds. The lack of effective communication in a relationship is one of the most destructive forces imaginable. It's the silent killer that slowly erodes trust, intimacy, understanding, and love without either person even realizing it's happening. It doesn't always start with big fights or dramatic breakups. Often it begins quietly, with unspoken feelings, ignored conversations, misunderstood intentions, and unresolved issues that pile up until they become too heavy to carry. Over time, that silence creates distance, resentment, and emotional disconnection that no amount of affection or effort can fix unless communication is restored. When communication is missing, misunderstandings multiply. Partners start assuming rather than asking, guessing instead of clarifying. Words left unsaid become distorted narratives in each other's minds. Innocent actions are misinterpreted as neglect or rejection. Simple issues become major conflicts because they're never addressed at their root. In the absence of honest dialogue, people fill in the blanks, often with the worst possible assumptions. This creates a cycle of mistrust and insecurity that weakens the foundation of the relationship. Without communication, emotional distance grows. Love requires connection, and connection requires conversation. When couples stop talking, truly talking, they stop knowing each other. They stop learning about each other's fears, dreams, struggles, and desires. The person once closest to you starts to feel like a stranger. Intimacy fades because intimacy is not just physical, it's emotional closeness built on shared thoughts and vulnerable conversations. Without it, even couples living under the same roof can feel worlds apart. A lack of communication also leads to unresolved conflict. Every relationship faces disagreements, but without healthy communication, those conflicts are swept under the rug rather than resolved. The result is resentment, small irritations that grow into deep frustrations. Over time, unresolved issues become emotional landmines, exploding unexpectedly and damaging trust. Instead of building bridges after disagreements, partners build walls, making reconciliation harder and harder. Another consequence is loss of trust. Trust is fragile, and silence is one of its greatest threats. When people stop communicating, they begin to question each other's motives. Doubt creeps in. Why didn't they tell me? What else are they hiding? Do they even care anymore? Transparency builds trust, silence breaks it. Even if nothing is being hidden, a lack of openness feels like a lack of honesty, which can be just as damaging. Communication breakdown also creates emotional neglect. People want to feel seen, heard, and understood. It's a fundamental human need. When communication stops, those needs go unmet. A partner might feel invisible, like their feelings don't matter or their voice isn't valued. This leads to loneliness, a painful kind of loneliness that exists even when you're not physically alone. Over time, that emotional neglect can become more damaging than any argument because it erodes the sense of safety and belonging that relationships are built on. Without communication, assumptions replace understanding. Partners start projecting their own thoughts and feelings onto each other instead of discovering the truth through conversation. One person might assume the other doesn't care because they're not expressive. The other might assume everything is fine because no one is speaking up. These false narratives grow until they overshadow reality, creating emotional distance that becomes harder to bridge. A relationship without communication also loses its sense of direction. Couples need regular conversations to align goals, share plans, and adjust expectations. When they stop talking, they stop growing together. They begin pursuing separate paths without realizing it. What started as a shared journey slowly turns into two parallel lives. The bond weakens because the partnership no longer feels like a partnership. It becomes two individuals simply coexisting. The lack of communication can even cause passion to die. Passion thrives on curiosity, exploration, and emotional engagement. When communication fades, so does the spark. Conversations that once felt exciting and deep become routine or non-existent. Partners stop discovering new layers of each other. The relationship becomes stagnant, predictable, dull, disconnected. In many cases, this is when one or both partners begin seeking emotional connection elsewhere, not always intentionally, but because their need for understanding and validation remains unmet. Perhaps the most damaging effect of poor communication is the creation of emotional walls. Each time feelings are dismissed, conversations are avoided, or problems are ignored, another brick is added to the wall separating two people. Eventually, those walls become so tall that even love can't climb over them. The relationship may still exist, people might stay together out of habit, obligation, or fear, but the soul of the relationship is gone. It becomes a partnership in name only, lacking the warmth and depth it once had. In short, the absence of communication is not just a weakness in a relationship, it is a warning sign of collapse. It transforms love into loneliness, partnership into distance, and connection into confusion. It makes small problems grow into insurmountable ones. It turns people who once shared everything into people who barely understand each other. It robs a relationship of its joy, its growth, its passion, and ultimately its future. The truth is simple yet profound. Relationships don't die because love disappears, they die because communication does. Love is the seed, but communication is the water and sunlight that help it grow. Without it, even the strongest love withers. With it, even the most broken relationship can heal. That's why nurturing communication is not optional, it's essential. It's the difference between a relationship that barely survives and one that truly thrives. When communication breaks down in a relationship, the consequences don't just stop at misunderstandings or hurt feelings, they seep into every layer of the connection, changing how two people see, feel, and respond to each other. Over time, the relationship doesn't just struggle, it begins to deteriorate from the inside out. One of the most damaging effects is the erosion of emotional intimacy. Without regular, honest conversations, partners stop sharing their inner worlds. Thoughts remain unspoken, fears remain hidden, dreams remain unknown. Slowly, the deep emotional bond that once held the relationship together starts to weaken. The laughter becomes less frequent, the conversations shorter, the silences heavier. What was once a vibrant connection becomes hollow, two people living side by side but no longer with each other. This lack of communication also breeds insecurity. In the absence of clear words and expressed feelings, doubt creeps in. One partner may wonder, do they still love me? Or am I still important? The silence becomes a mirror that reflects uncertainty back at them. Even small changes in behavior like fewer messages, shorter replies, or less eye contact become magnified in the absence of explanation. These insecurities grow, and over time they chip away at self-esteem and trust. A person who once felt valued and cherished may begin to feel invisible or unwanted, not because love is gone, but because it's no longer being communicated. When communication is missing, resentment festers like poison. Words left unsaid don't disappear, they build up beneath the surface, hardening into bitterness. A small misunderstanding, if never discussed, becomes a bigger problem. A recurring behavior, if never addressed, becomes a major source of frustration. What could have been solved with one honest conversation turns into months or even years of silent resentment. Eventually, one or both partners explode not because of one single issue, but because of 1,000 tiny moments that were never spoken about. By then, the damage is often much harder to repair. Lack of communication also leads to emotional withdrawal. When attempts to talk go unheard, when feelings are dismissed or ignored, people begin to pull away, first emotionally, then physically. They stop trying to express themselves. They stop sharing their thoughts. They stop reaching out for connection. This withdrawal can create a dangerous emotional gap where both partners feel lonely, even while lying next to each other. It's one of the most painful experiences in a relationship, being physically close but emotionally distant. In many cases, poor communication also sets the stage for unhealthy coping mechanisms. When partners don't feel heard or understood, they may start seeking validation elsewhere. It might be in the form of overworking, oversharing with friends, emotional dependence on someone else, or even infidelity. These behaviors don't always happen out of malice. Often, they're desperate attempts to fill a void that honest communication could have prevented. This is how relationships that once felt unshakable end up breaking, not because love vanished overnight, but because silence slowly pushed the partners apart. Another devastating result is the loss of shared purpose. Relationships thrive when both people communicate their goals, plans, and dreams regularly. When that stops, they start moving in different directions without realizing it. Years down the line, they look up and realize they no longer want the same things, not because they changed, but because they stopped talking about what mattered. Misaligned priorities about family, finances, future plans become major sources of conflict, all of which could have been avoided if conversations had continued. Poor communication also weakens the foundation of conflict resolution. Every relationship will face disagreements, but without healthy communication skills, those conflicts spiral into blame games, stonewalling, or avoidance. Some couples argue constantly because they're trying to be right instead of understood. Others avoid conflict altogether, sweeping issues under the rug until resentment becomes unbearable. In both cases, problems never truly get solved, they just get buried deeper. Over time, the unresolved weight becomes too heavy to carry, leading to emotional burnout or eventual separation. Perhaps the most tragic consequence of all is that the relationship stops growing. Communication is how relationships evolve. It's how two people grow together instead of apart. It's how they adapt to life's changes, support each other's dreams, and navigate new challenges. Without communication, the relationship gets stuck in the past. It becomes stagnant, predictable, lifeless. Even if both people still care, the bond loses its spark because growth is impossible without conversation. In the end, the absence of communication is not a neutral state, it is an active force of decay. It slowly dismantles the very elements that make a relationship meaningful: trust, understanding, intimacy, passion, partnership. It turns us into me and you. It turns closeness into distance. It turns love into obligation. And the most painful part is that this erosion often happens silently, unnoticed until it's too late. Yet the flip side is just as true. Almost every broken relationship that once had love can heal if communication is restored. Conversations can rebuild trust. Honest words can dissolve resentment. Vulnerability can reignite intimacy. Communication has the power to repair what silence destroyed. That's why it is not merely an ingredient in a relationship, it is the foundation on which everything else stands. Without it, even the strongest love can crumble. With it, even the weakest bond can grow into something unshakable. No matter how broken a relationship feels, no matter how deep the silence has grown or how wide the distance seems, hope is never lost, because communication once reignited has the power to resurrect even what looks dead. The absence of communication might have caused wounds, misunderstandings, mistrust, or even years of emotional separation, but the truth is this: as long as two hearts are still willing, even slightly, to try, healing is always possible. Relationships don't fall apart overnight, and they don't heal overnight either. But just as cracks can spread slowly in silence, healing can also spread slowly through intentional conversations, patient listening, and consistent acts of understanding. It's easy to believe that once communication is lost, the connection is gone forever. Yet history and countless real stories show otherwise. Couples who once couldn't stand the sight of each other have rebuilt stronger, deeper bonds. Friends who didn't speak for decades have reconciled with a single heartfelt conversation. Marriages on the brink of collapse have been restored not through magic but through one simple but powerful choice: the decision to start talking again. It doesn't matter how many times communication has failed before. What matters is the willingness to try this time with humility, patience, and an open heart. The road to restoration is rarely quick, but it's always worth it. Healing begins with one courageous step: speaking honestly. Even if the words are messy, even if they're awkward or imperfect, they are the bridge back to understanding. It might start with something as small as "I miss talking to you" or "I want to understand what went wrong." It might require apologizing for the silence or acknowledging the hurt caused by it. These words might not fix everything immediately, but they open the door. Once that door is open, healing has a path to enter. The next crucial step is listening, truly listening. It's about hearing not just the words but the pain, the fears, and the unspoken emotions behind them. Many times, people stop communicating not because they no longer care but because they feel unheard. When they finally feel listened to deeply and sincerely, walls begin to fall. Trust, though fragile, starts to rebuild. Hearts that were closed begin to soften. It's also vital to embrace patience in this process. If communication has been absent for a long time, it will take time to rebuild it. There may be setbacks, misunderstandings, or moments when it feels like progress has stalled. But every conversation, even the difficult ones, is a step forward. Healing is not measured by how fast things change, but by the fact that change is happening at all. Even small shifts in tone, small moments of vulnerability, or small gestures of care are signs of hope taking root again. Forgiveness plays a powerful role too. Part of restoring communication is letting go of the resentment that silence may have caused. It's about choosing to focus on building a future instead of reliving the past. This doesn't mean forgetting the pain, but rather learning from it and using it as fuel to communicate better moving forward. Forgiveness doesn't happen in one moment, it's a process, but each time you choose understanding over blame, you strengthen the bridge back to connection. Remember too that vulnerability is not weakness, it's the birthplace of healing. Many people fear restarting communication because they're afraid of rejection or afraid their efforts won't be reciprocated. But vulnerability often inspires vulnerability. One person's courage to speak openly often encourages the other to do the same. Even if one person starts the process alone, that single act of courage can set a powerful chain reaction in motion. It's also worth knowing that communication doesn't have to return all at once. Sometimes it begins with simple, surface-level conversations and gradually deepens over time. Sometimes it's written words before spoken ones. Sometimes it's shared silence before shared stories. The key is consistency. Keep showing up, keep trying, keep choosing to engage even when it's hard. Consistency builds safety, and safety invites openness. Above all, never underestimate the redemptive power of love expressed through communication. Words can heal wounds that time alone cannot. A sincere apology can dissolve years of resentment. A heartfelt conversation can rebuild bridges once thought burned. A patient, compassionate dialogue can reignite a connection that once felt lost forever. So no matter how long communication has been missing, no matter how far apart two hearts feel, hope is never out of reach. Restoration is not about erasing the past, it's about writing a new chapter. It's about acknowledging what went wrong and choosing every day to speak life, healing, and understanding into what remains. Love doesn't die because communication stopped, it simply falls asleep. And like anything asleep, it can awaken gently, gradually, powerfully, when nurtured with intention, honesty, patience, and faith. So take that first step, send that message, ask that question, break the silence, because the moment communication begins again, no matter how small, no matter how late, the story of that relationship is no longer about what was lost. It becomes a story of what can still be found. Hope in a relationship is not naive. It is powerful, necessary, and deeply transformative. It is the unseen thread that holds two hearts together even when everything else seems to be falling apart. It is the reason people try one more time after countless disappointments, the reason they choose patience when giving up would be easier, the reason they stay open to healing even when pain has hardened their hearts. Hope is the belief that broken things can be rebuilt, that silence can be replaced with conversation, that distance can shrink, and that love, once real, can rise again. It is not blind optimism. It is courageous faith in the potential that still exists beneath the hurt. When communication has been absent for a long time, it's easy to believe that the damage is irreversible. The mind whispers, it's too late. The heart says, we've grown too far apart. But hope answers, if we created this distance, we can close it. If silence built these walls, words can tear them down. The truth is, relationships don't fail because they're beyond saving, they fail because people stop believing they can be saved. The moment belief returns, the process of rebuilding begins. Hope is the starting point of reconciliation, and communication is the vehicle that carries it forward. The journey back may be slow, but that's okay. Healing doesn't demand instant perfection, it asks for consistent progress. It might start with one honest conversation after months of silence. It might begin with an apology that feels overdue. It might unfold as a series of small gestures that say, I still care, long before the words themselves are spoken. Each of these small steps matters. They are proof that love is still present, even if buried beneath layers of misunderstanding, and that it still has a chance to grow. There's immense power in understanding that people can change. The way you communicated before doesn't have to define the future. Patterns of silence, defensiveness, avoidance, or resentment don't have to be permanent. With awareness, intention, and humility, they can be replaced with openness, empathy, and understanding. Growth doesn't erase the past, but it rewrites the future, and that future can be brighter, stronger, and more connected than anything that existed before. Hope also teaches patience, one of the most vital ingredients in restoring communication. When trust has been broken, when words have gone unspoken for too long, healing will not happen overnight. But every effort to communicate, even if it's met with hesitation at first, plants a seed. That seed might grow slowly, but with time it will blossom into trust again. What matters is not how fast things change, but that they are changing. Patience says, we're not where we want to be yet, but we're closer than we were yesterday. Forgiveness, too, becomes possible when hope is present. Many people cling to past hurts, believing they are proof that the relationship cannot recover. But hope reframes those wounds not as reasons to give up, but as lessons to grow from. Forgiveness is not about forgetting or excusing. It's about freeing yourself and the relationship from the weight of yesterday so that tomorrow can begin. It is the soil in which new communication can grow. Without it, every conversation is poisoned by the past. With it, every word becomes a building block for the future. Even relationships that have been broken for years have found their way back through the power of hope and communication. Couples separated for decades have reunited and built lives together. Friends who stopped speaking have reconciled and become closer than ever. Families torn apart by silence have healed with heartfelt words spoken at the right time. These stories aren't rare miracles, they're proof of what's possible when people refuse to give up on each other. Hope also changes how we communicate. When we believe restoration is possible, we speak differently. Our words become gentler, our tone becomes more patient, our listening becomes more intentional. We stop speaking from a place of blame and start speaking from a place of desire, the desire to rebuild, reconnect, and understand. Hope turns conversations from battlegrounds into bridges. The beauty of hope is that it doesn't require everything to change at once. It asks only for one step, one attempt to speak honestly, one choice to listen fully, one moment of vulnerability that says, I still believe in us. Those small steps, repeated over time, create momentum. They build trust. They invite healing. They make space for love to grow again, often deeper and stronger than it was before. So no matter how much time has passed, no matter how deep the silence runs, no matter how hopeless things may seem, do not give up. Every relationship has the potential for redemption if both hearts are willing to try. Words still have power. Conversations still have the ability to heal. Vulnerability still has the strength to rebuild. You may not be able to change the past, but you can absolutely shape the future, one conversation, one apology, one moment of courage at a time. Hope is not foolish. Hope is not weak. Hope is the strongest force a relationship can have because it keeps the door open even when everything else has tried to close it. As long as there is breath, there is time. As long as there is willingness, there is possibility. As long as there is love, even in the smallest spark, there is something worth saving. So hold on to that hope. Let it lead you back to communication. Let communication lead you back to connection. And let connection lead you back to the love that once felt lost, because it is still there, waiting to be spoken into life again. It is never too late to cultivate effective communication, never too late to speak, to listen, to reconnect, to rebuild. No matter how far apart two people have drifted, no matter how much silence has settled between them, no matter how many mistakes have been made, the door to understanding is still wide open. Communication is not a skill reserved for those who get it right from the start. It's a discipline, a choice, a practice, one that can begin at any moment, even long after words stopped flowing. The beauty of communication is that it's alive. It can be learned, improved, and transformed at any stage of life, in any type of relationship, under any circumstances. The most common lie people tell themselves in struggling relationships is, "It's too late." They believe too much damage has been done, too much time has passed, too many words have gone unspoken. But the truth is, communication is like a muscle. Neglected muscles weaken, but they never lose the ability to grow strong again. All it takes is intention and consistent effort. One honest conversation, one moment of humility, one act of listening with an open heart, that's all it takes to begin revering months or even years of disconnection. Cultivating effective communication begins with a shift in mindset. It starts by accepting that the past cannot be rewritten, but the future can be reshaped. Instead of dwelling on missed opportunities to speak, focus on the ones that lie ahead. Instead of regretting what wasn't said, commit to expressing what needs to be said now. Every new conversation is a new chance, a chance to clarify, to connect, to heal, to grow. Communication isn't about where you were yesterday, it's about where you choose to go today. The process often starts small. It could be as simple as asking, "Can we talk?" It might be sending a heartfelt message or writing a letter when speaking feels too hard. It might mean choosing to listen without interrupting, even if you haven't done so before. It might mean apologizing sincerely and without excuses. These small steps are powerful because they communicate the most important message of all: "I'm trying." And when one person tries, it often inspires the other to try too. One of the greatest misconceptions about communication is that it's only valuable when it's perfect. But perfect communication doesn't exist. What matters is authenticity. Even if you stumble over your words, even if your voice shakes, even if you don't know exactly how to say it, sincerity always speaks louder than polished speeches. People don't remember flawless sentences, they remember genuine effort. They remember the courage it took to start the conversation. They remember the vulnerability in your honesty. It's also crucial to understand that communication is not a one-time fix, it's a continuous journey. Like planting a seed, the first conversation is just the beginning. It needs to be watered with patience, nurtured with consistency, and protected with empathy. Over time, those small conversations grow into strong habits. They create an environment where both people feel safe expressing themselves, where silence no longer feels like distance, but like space for deeper dialogue. Even relationships that have endured decades of silence can be transformed through renewed communication. Parents and children estranged for years have rebuilt loving bonds. Siblings who stopped speaking over old conflicts have reconciled. Couples on the verge of separation have rediscovered each other. What these stories have in common is not that the past was erased, it's that someone decided the future was worth fighting for. They chose to speak, even when it was uncomfortable. They chose to listen, even when it was painful. They chose to try, even when it felt too late. In truth, there is no such thing as too late when it comes to communication, only too afraid to try. The past cannot silence the possibility of the present unless you let it. As long as there is breath in your lungs and a desire in your heart to reconnect, you have everything you need to begin. Communication is not about perfection, it's about progress. It's about replacing distance with dialogue, resentment with understanding, silence with sincerity. So if you're standing at the edge of a broken relationship, whether romantic, familial, or even within yourself, know this: it is not over. The silence does not have to define the story. The walls do not have to remain standing. The disconnect does not have to be permanent. With each word spoken intentionally, with each moment of listening deeply, with each effort to understand rather than judge, you write a new chapter, one where healing is possible, trust is rebuilt, and love finds its way back. Start today, speak the words you've been holding back. Ask the questions you were afraid to ask, apologize if you must, forgive if you can, be vulnerable even if it scares you. Because every great relationship, every strong friendship, every lasting love, every healed bond is not built on flawless communication from the beginning. It's built on the relentless choice to keep communicating, no matter how many times you failed before. It's never too late, not today, not tomorrow, not ever. The door to connection is still open, all you have to do is walk through it. The truth about communication and what makes it so powerful is that it can always be reborn. No matter how much silence has suffocated a relationship, no matter how many words were left unspoken, no matter how deeply hurt has settled in, the moment someone decides to speak with honesty, everything begins to shift. It doesn't matter if it's been weeks, months, or decades, communication can still spark healing, rekindle trust, and breathe life back into something that once felt beyond saving. It is never about how long the silence lasted, it's about the moment someone chooses to break it. When we say it's too late, what we're really saying is I'm afraid it won't work. But fear is not the same as finality. Many relationships fail not because reconciliation was impossible, but because no one believed it could happen. Hope dies the moment people stop trying, not the moment they stop speaking. The willingness to try again, to send that message, to pick up the phone, to say, "Can we talk?" is the spark that can reignite even the dimmest flame. Communication is resilient. It doesn't care how many times it was neglected before. The moment you choose it again, it becomes powerful again. What's remarkable is how even the smallest attempts to communicate can create massive change. A simple "I'm sorry" can soften years of bitterness. A heartfelt "I miss us" can melt layers of emotional distance. A sincere "I want to understand" can rebuild trust that seemed impossible to restore. These moments don't erase the past, but they transform how the future unfolds. They remind the other person and yourself that the relationship still matters, that the connection is still worth nurturing. It's important to remember that effective communication is a skill, not a talent. Skills are learned, practiced, and refined over time. You don't need to have mastered it before, you can start learning now. The fact that you struggled to express yourself in the past doesn't mean you're incapable of doing so now. The fact that conversations once turned into arguments doesn't mean they always will. Every new attempt is a chance to do it better, to speak more thoughtfully, to listen more deeply, to understand more completely. Rebuilding communication often requires humility, the courage to admit where things went wrong and the willingness to approach the other person without pride. It also requires patience, because healing isn't instant and trust isn't rebuilt overnight. But with each conversation, no matter how small, the relationship becomes stronger. Each word becomes a brick in a new foundation. Each honest exchange becomes a stitch in the fabric of reconnection. Even when the other person seems distant or unresponsive, don't underestimate the impact of consistent effort. People often test sincerity before they trust it. They may resist at first, not out of disinterest, but because they're unsure if the change is real. That's why consistency is key, showing through your actions and your words that you're committed to doing things differently this time. Over time, even the hardest hearts can soften, even the deepest wounds can close. And here's a profound truth: many relationships are not lost, they're simply waiting, waiting for the right words, waiting for the right moment, waiting for someone to say, "I still believe in us." Relationships that feel frozen can come back to life when communication returns, because communication is the heartbeat of connection. When it starts beating again, so does hope, trust, and love. It's also never too late to learn new ways to communicate. Maybe the methods you used before didn't work. Maybe you argued instead of listened, avoided instead of addressing, assumed instead of asking. That doesn't mean the future has to follow the same pattern. New tools, new strategies, new perspectives can make all the difference. Empathy can replace defensiveness. Active listening can replace reactive responses. Gentle honesty can replace silent resentment. Above all, cultivating communication isn't just about saving a relationship, it's about growing yourself. Every time you choose to speak truthfully, you build courage. Every time you choose to listen deeply, you build patience. Every time you choose to resolve rather than avoid, you build strength. These are the qualities that not only heal relationships but also shape character, deepen emotional intelligence, and enrich every connection in your life. So if you're standing at a crossroads wondering if it's too late, hear this clearly. It is, not even close. The power to change the narrative still belongs to you. The past does not decide the future, your choices now do. The silence does not define the story, your voice can rewrite it. It's never too late to say the words you didn't say, to hear the things you once ignored, to rebuild what was broken, to reconnect what was lost. Communication is a door that never truly closes. It might be stiff from years of disuse, but the key still fits. All it takes is the courage to turn it. Start small, start slow, but start. Because the longer you wait, the heavier the silence becomes, yet the moment you speak, the weight begins to lift, and once it does, you'll realize something profound: it was never too late, it was only waiting for you to begin. Starting to cultivate effective communication, especially if it's been missing for a long time, can feel intimidating, but the truth is, it's much simpler than most people think. It doesn't require grand speeches or perfect words. It requires intention, consistency, and a willingness to grow. Whether you're trying to heal a broken relationship, strengthen an existing one, or simply become a better communicator in life, the process begins with small, deliberate steps that gradually transform how you connect with others. Here, how to start. 1. Make the decision, commit to change. Everything begins with a choice. Effective communication won't happen by accident, you must decide to make it a priority. This means acknowledging that the way you've been communicating or not communicating hasn't been serving your relationship or your life. It's about saying to yourself, "I want to understand more than I want to be right. I want to connect more than I want to win." Once you make this decision, your mindset shifts from defending your position to building a bridge. This internal shift is the most powerful first step. 2. Start with self-awareness. Before you can communicate better with others, you must understand how you currently communicate. Ask yourself tough questions. Do I interrupt others when they speak? Do I listen just to respond or to understand? Do I avoid hard conversations because they're uncomfortable? Do I shut down or go silent when I feel hurt? Recognizing your patterns, both good and bad, gives you the clarity to change them. Self-awareness also helps you become more mindful of your tone, body language, and emotional triggers, all of which affect how your message is received. 3. Start small, break the silence gently. If communication has been missing, don't try to solve everything in one conversation. Start with something simple and honest. A message like, "I miss talking with you. Can we sit down and talk about how we're doing? I know I haven't communicated well before, but I want to do better." The goal is not to fix everything overnight, it's to open the door. Once that door is open, more meaningful conversations will follow naturally. 4. Create safe space for conversation. Effective communication thrives in safety. People open up when they feel they won't be judged, mocked, or dismissed. Make it clear through words and actions that your intention is to understand, not attack. Listen without interrupting. Don't rush to defend yourself. Validate their feelings even if you don't fully agree. Phrases like, "I hear you. I understand that you feel that way. Thank you for sharing that with me," go a long way in building trust and encouraging deeper dialogue. 5. Master the art of listening. Most communication fails not because people don't talk, but because they don't listen. Cultivating communication starts with shifting from passive hearing to active listening. This means giving full attention, putting away phones or distractions, letting the other person finish without interrupting, reflecting back what you heard. What I'm hearing you say is, asking clarifying questions. Can you tell me more about how that made you feel? When people feel heard, they become more open, and the more open they are, the more honest and productive your conversations become. 6. Express honestly but with care. Being truthful doesn't mean being harsh. Speak honestly about your feelings and needs, but do so with kindness and respect. Use I statements instead of accusations. For example, instead of "you never listen," say, "I feel unheard when I'm trying to share something." Instead of "you don't care," say, "I need more reassurance to feel supported." This approach removes blame and keeps the conversation constructive. 7. Embrace vulnerability. One of the most powerful ways to build strong communication is through vulnerability, the willingness to be real even when it's uncomfortable. Share your fears, regrets, hopes, and insecurities. Vulnerability invites vulnerability. When one person opens up, it often gives the other permission to do the same. This creates deeper emotional intimacy and turns conversations into meaningful connections. 8. Be patient. It's a process, not a quick fix. Communication isn't something you master overnight. It's a skill you build over time, like learning an instrument or training a muscle. Don't get discouraged if the first few conversations are awkward or don't go perfectly. Every effort, no matter how small, is progress. Celebrate the small wins: a deeper conversation, a resolved misunderstanding, a moment of mutual understanding. 9. Learn to apologize and forgive. Effective communication often requires unlearning old habits, and that means acknowledging when you've failed. A sincere apology like "I'm sorry for how I handled things before" can reset the tone of a relationship. Likewise, be willing to forgive. Clinging to past miscommunications only keeps you stuck in them. Forgiveness clears the space for healthier communication moving forward. 10. Keep the conversation ongoing. Finally, remember that communication is not a one-time event, it's a continuous practice. Don't wait for conflicts or problems to talk. Make conversation a regular part of your relationship. Check in with each other, share your thoughts even about small things, celebrate victories, discuss challenges before they become crises. The more communication becomes part of your daily rhythm, the stronger your connection will grow. Starting to cultivate communication isn't about being perfect, it's about being present. It's about showing up with the willingness to listen, to speak truthfully, and to understand deeply. It's about choosing connection over pride, understanding over ego, growth over comfort. Even if communication was once your greatest weakness, it can become your greatest strength if you start now. Because the most important conversations of your life are not the ones that happened years ago. They're the ones you choose to have today.